Hey everyone, I'm your host Adrian. We do content like this weekly, so hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified. If you want more content like this, click the like button and please leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. All right, you ready, Dr. Trudeau?
I'm ready. Hit it.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to today's Rupa Live class presented by Rupa University, the best way to learn about specialty lab work from industry experts. My name is Adrian Martinez, and I will be your host for this afternoon. Today, we have a very special guest in Dr. Wendy Trudeau here to talk about navigating humanity, deciphering the clues our food leaves with ALA-tests. Before jumping in, a couple of quick housekeeping items. Everyone joining will be muted by default, but if you do have any questions, please use that Q&A button down in your menu bar, and we'll host a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Immediately following the Q&A, yours truly will show you exactly how to order these tests directly on Rupa Health. And if you have to jump early, no worries. We are recording these sessions as we always do, and we'll go ahead and send that out once we've had the opportunity to edit it to everyone who registered, as well as we will post it to rupauniversity.com. And one last thing about Rupa University, if you are interested in this type of content, be sure to check it out at rupauniversity.com to get access to this session, as well as all of the previous sessions that we have done. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. I'd like to introduce Dr. Wendy Trudeau. Dr. Trudeau is an IFM certified practitioner. She's passionate about helping women optimize their health and lives as a functional medicine gynecologist. Through her struggles with mold and metal toxicity, celiac disease, and other health issues, Trudeau has developed a deep sense of compassion and expertise for what her patients are facing. She is the co-author of Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great, and Feel Freaking Amazing. You can see that, I think, right behind you, Dr. Trudeau. So thank you so much for joining us today. I will go ahead and let you take it from here.
Adrian, thanks for that introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. And I think what was so striking about when you were talking to people, welcoming them in, is I always feel like we're so interconnected. And this just really underscores that we are so interconnected, and it really does transition beautifully into the body, because you can't make one change in one part of the body without impacting the other part of the body. So as we were looking at creating this presentation, we were like, what should we call it? And then we realized, like, humans need to navigate food every day. And so that was the impetus for how we started this presentation. So let's dive in. So we're going to talk about ALA-tests and the ways in which it can contribute to greater knowledge of your patient. So there's a number of things we want to cover in today's talk. One, obviously your gut runs the body. So how is the food we're eating contributing to disease states? Obviously, food sensitivity testing. We're going to talk about ALA-tests. I didn't realize when I got dressed this morning, I'm dressed in ALA-tests' logo colors. It wasn't intentional, but it's like a propos. And we're going to talk about what are the appropriate times to use it. How do you actually take the knowledge that you get from it and use and interpret it? And then how do you layer that onto your patient's journey towards greater health and vitality? And then we'll talk about any questions or anything I haven't answered. All right. This is ALA-tests' mission statement. I despise reading slides to people, so I'm going to let you read this for yourself. And just know I've been working with ALA-tests. I've been a client and a provider with ALA-tests for, it's hard to do math on the spot, but since I would say 2008, when I started doing functional medicine. And I'm not paid for this. I do this because I love their product. And it's really helped with guiding patients from not understanding what's going on to really understanding what's going on. All right. So as we talk about ALA-tests, it's a great company. They have really strict quality control. They work worldwide. They're over 40 years old. It's kind of cool. I'm older than them, but they're over 40 years old. They have great technology. And then the thing that's really striking and different in today's world is that when you call their customer service, they actually pick up the phone, which is kind of shocking. So you will get a human being when you call ALA-tests. Let's talk first about food and disease. I mean, we all know that disease starts in the gut. And this is an example of what happens when humans eat gluten. And even if you don't have the DQ2 or DQ8 genes that make you more likely or make it possible for you to get celiac disease, anytime a human eats gluten, which is part of a standard diet, especially across the world now, a number of things happen and it sets off a domino effect. So if you don't have the genes, well, I'll get back to that part. That's a punchline. So what happens? You eat the gluten. it binds to this receptor called CXCR3. I didn't name it. Don't blame me. It's hard to remember. That CXCR3 sets off a chain of events inside the cell, and that causes the normal tight junctions that line the gut. Remember, this is one cell wall thick from your mouth to your anus, so there's really not a lot protecting you from the outside world. It causes those tight junctions to open. Now, if you don't have the genes, those tight junctions open for about 15 minutes. If you do have the genes, those tight junctions open for up to 4 hours. So those two genes, as I mentioned, are DQ2 and DQ8. If you don't have the genes, you'll never get celiac, but you can get non-celiac gluten sensitivity. The reason this matters is that when you open the tight junctions, you're now exposing the entire outside world of bacteria, toxins, mold, food particles, you name it, it's getting through, and those are getting into the bloodstream. And then we're going to talk about what the bloodstream does in response, because the bloodstream does recognize all of those particles as foreign bodies. Let's talk about food sensitivity testing. When we do food sensitivity testing, it's a window into what's happening in the gut. And because the gut is the window in what's happening in the body, it gives us a lot of insight into how are we going to navigate this health challenge that whatever that patient is sitting in front of you is dealing with right now. So let's go big picture. I remember in med school, we were deep in the weeds in biochem, and I said to them, where are we in the body? So let's go big picture. We're going to look at IgG, and that's via the bloodstream. ALA-test works with IgG, IgA. It has a number of different tests. We're going to focus today on IgG, which is the long-term bloodstream antibody responses you can see. There's IgE, which is truly a true food allergy. That's where you can have anaphylaxis. We are not focusing on that testing today. And there also is IgA testing as an option, because that evaluates more recent exposures and what's been happening for people in the recent past, as opposed to the 6 months past. The thing that's really important to remember is that IgG tells you what your antibodies are doing. It does not tell you what your clinical responses are. It doesn't correlate one-to-one. So it's really important to say to people, we use this as sort of a roadmap to guide us where we want to look, but you're not necessarily going to react to everything you find, because there is sometimes when you start to have overall system response, that's going to show up in food sensitivity too. Okay. Now, let's go back to IgA, you're going to use that when people have changed their diet and they're really not responding. You're going to start to want to look at IgA. All right, so we're not going too deeply into the immune system, but we want to just take a quick trip down memory lane in terms of what's happening in our immune system. So there's the innate immune response. That's rapid. You're born with it. You can increase it or quiet it, and certain things in life will alter it. But really what we're looking at today is the adaptive immunity. This is what you've caused to happen. This is your B cell and your T cell responses. Okay, so this is a developed immunity as opposed to an automatic immunity. And this is just drilled in a little bit more. Again, we're focusing on only B cell and T cell, and not the innate immunity. That would be the IgE pathway. So let's talk about IgG. IgG is the most common antibody. It's everywhere. It's really what your body's response is over time. So it will develop to anything that your immune system is presented to. And it's the most common immune reaction against food protein. So when you're looking for ways to evaluate food sensitivities, IgG testing is great, because you're really getting a wide range of information from this. And this sort of goes without saying, but I'll say it. The more you eat and the more reactive you get, the higher the levels of IgG reaction are. And the high levels indicate that the immune response has started to become tolerant because of previous exposures, and you just keep the IgG levels high. It takes about 23 days for the IgG levels to go down. So when you're starting to work with people, and we'll talk about this more later, you want people to do eliminations for about 3 weeks, because that is how long it takes for the half-life, half of it, to go away, and people can see reactions at that point when they challenge. IgG, you're going to want to use this for people who have chronic health issues or delayed food immune reactive issues. Then the IgA, this is what you're going to want to use when they're not improving from changing their gut. It's also important if you suspect someone has really severe immune challenges and their immune system isn't functioning, like someone with celiac like me, before diagnosis. Serum IgA is great to look at whether the immune system is robust or whether it's quieted down. IgE, we're not going to be testing, but this is the overview of IgE. You can use it to identify foods that people will have acute immune responses to. This is the lip swelling, throat swelling, anaphylactic reactions that people have. So an IgE reaction is not an intolerance. It is a true allergy. So if you test and you find this, people really, you want to pay attention to it. And it can range from anything from hives to anaphylaxis, which is life-threatening. And it can occur right away, or you can see delayed immune responses up to 8 hours later, which can make it a little challenging for people. But in cases of people who have immediate immune reactions, you're going to want to look down the IgE path. All right. So when we talk about who would benefit from food sensitivity testing, it's a huge list. And at one point I looked at the team and I said, well, basically, if you're human and if you have a human sitting in your office, you're going to want to test them for food sensitivities because something brought them to you. And they aren't coming for a refill necessarily on their migraine medicine. They're coming because they have an issue that they believe is modifiable or improvable, and they're right. So anyone with any of these issues, I would include on this, which I don't see, dementia and Parkinson's and anything that's degenerative. You want to look for people who have any type of high immune response. Anyone who's sitting in your office is a good candidate for a food sensitivity test. And, our demographic skews 30 to 65 female, upper middle class with disposable income. But it's not only those women who benefit. We also see, for example, one of our colleagues' friends' sons was an athlete, like a high-performing athlete, and just felt terrible. So there were a couple parts to this. One, he turns out when you drill into his history, he was eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, basically peanut butter and a wheat bread sandwich all day long because he was on the go. He was super rushed and he wasn't sure what else to eat because he felt awful. Now, if you have any functional medicine background at all, you're going to know that wheat is really implicated in a lot of problems. And peanut butter is also very moldy. So between the wheat, which is opening up his tight junctions, and the peanut butter, which is super moldy, it's not a good combination. For anyone who has kids in the audience, it's like hungry and tired when you have a toddler. It's a really bad combination. So someone who is sensitive to wheat and also eating a moldy food is not someone who's going to feel well over time. So this athlete's mother came to the practice and said, could you test my son? And one of the first things we did was run a food sensitivity test on him. He had irritable bowel, bloating, gas. He had difficulty gaining weight. He had just sort of achy joints and fatigue and brain fog. He didn't feel well. So we did a food sensitivity on him and it was lit up, just crazy lit up for gluten. And he also reacted to the legumes too. And we took him off gluten and peanuts, and probably in about 3 weeks, which is how long it takes for the IgG antibodies to quiet themselves down, he started noticing that his gut was significantly better, his brain was better, his joints hurt less. His coach noticed his performance went up in his athletic prowess. And over time, more than 3 weeks, he started to be able to gain muscle, which was something he was struggling with before. So again, this sort of sounds like tongue in cheek, but really, if you have a human sitting in your office who's not 100% and better than they've ever been, this is a good person to order food sensitivity testing on. It's not covered by insurance. It's a cash payment, but for a lot of patients who have a flexible spending account or a health savings account, it is reimbursable via that mechanism. Let's dive into a sample test. ALLATest has 3 different test size panels. So there's 96, there's 196, and there's 204. I tend to order the 196. I like that panel. It's nice and broad. This is about half price. So patients who want to have just some information, but slightly less of a cost up front, they can do this test. And I know that Adrian's going to review all this with you at the end, how to order it, the cost and all of that. So he's going to cover that at the end. So this is a sample 96 panel test. And what I want to talk about a few things on this. This is a patient who does not really have leaky gut, but has something going on. When you're looking at these tests, the tests are stratified by no reaction, no sensitive reaction, meaning there's nothing is lit up. It'll have a 0 in the class next to it. Then a mild reaction is a light blue color, and that's a reaction of level 1. Then a moderate antibody reaction is level 2, that's yellow, and a high reaction is level 3. Now remember, this is not your clinical reaction, this is your antibody reaction. So you can have, especially if you're immune suppressed, you could have very low antibody reactions, but be very significantly reactive clinically to something. So when you're looking at these tests, you want to start to suss out, and they are reported this way, you want to start to suss out what are the high reactive levels, what are the moderate, and what are the mild. And generally in our practice, what we say to patients is either completely eliminate, and it depends on each patient, right? So in this patient, peanut was a class 3, and they had some other mild to moderate reactivity in the legumes. And then when you look at the other ones, the other 3 legumes and pulses listed on it, there is a score, and this may be too drilled in, but it is important to notice for patients, sometimes they won't come up as quote unquote positive, but they'll be in the indeterminate zone, which I'm pretty sure is over 0.185, which isn't yet positive. 0.185 to 0.198 is not positive, but it's indeterminate. So if you start to notice that they're not positive, but they have a long list of things that are right on the cusp, you could say to them, this is something to pay attention to if it's within a category. So when we're interpreting these, we like to use the categories because for example, on this patient, the grains and starches, they have mild reactions to all of the gluten grains. Often I'll say to someone, if you have a mild reaction, you can eat something 2 to 3 times a week. Just try not to eat it on successive days. Separate it by a day or 2. However, here are one of these exceptions to the rule. If you have categorical responses to a category of food, and within the grains and starches, these are all the gluten grains that were tested. And then I say to people, I do recommend that you do an elimination of this food because you're coming up across the category. Okay, I know it's a little hard, especially because we're not in conversation, but at the end, if this isn't clear, please do ask me because I'm happy to clarify this. So generally, when we get a test like this, we're saying, okay, for things like grapefruit, lemon, and orange, look at that. They're all citrus fruits. You may want to limit your intake of citrus fruits and or watch your reactions when you have them. The best way to tell if you're having a reaction to a food is to eliminate it for 3 weeks. That's because it takes 3 weeks for the IgG antibodies half-life to decrease by half. And then at the end of 3 weeks, you have 2 options. My husband is my business partner, and we debate this on occasion. So what he says is, after 3 weeks, challenge with that food. And what a challenge means is you eat it breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, and you see if you have a reaction. My response to people is eliminate it for 3 weeks. And at the end of those 3 weeks, you have a decision tree. You can either challenge if you're not sure whether it was impactful, or if you're clear it was impactful, stay on the path you're on and don't challenge, can just continue to avoid that food. I have mixed feelings. I really feel that avoidance of pain is a tremendous motivator for people. So I would much rather, if people are doing well, don't set them back. We have had people who at the end of 3 weeks challenged because they were told to challenge and had tremendous setbacks, usually in the realm of gluten and dairy. Those are the things that set people off the most. But if they're not sure, absolutely have them challenge. So let's talk about a 184 food sensitivity panel. So this is what it looks like when you get it. And let's go 10,000 feet. When you're looking at this panel, there's a lot lit up here. There's a lot to pay attention to. And humans' first response is to say, oh my gosh, there's so much here. What am I going to look at first? So what we want to do is look at big picture items, big ticket items, things that are categorical, meaning, for example, this patient, when you look at the fish and shellfish, comes up as positive of varying sensitivities to clam, crab, lobster, mussel, oyster, shrimp. They come up for some other fish too, but what you start to notice is that they've pretty much captured all of the shellfish on their reactivity. So that's a patient I would say, limit your intake of shellfish. Now, a lot of people are not eating shellfish all the time. I live in Massachusetts, so we only eat it in the summer when you go to Cape Cod and you get, clams off the boat, or lobsters off the boat. So it's not like people are eating it all the time, but if someone is eating something in a category, I do recommend that they eliminate it to see how they feel. Then let's look at this patient. There's dairy and egg category. They have come up as positive, varying sensitivities, but they come up as highly reactive to casein, which is the protein in milk. They come up as highly reactive to whey, and they come up as highly reactive to cow's milk, but they're also positive for the goat, the sheep, and all the other forms that are tested. So for patients like this, again, I would say, I really highly recommend you eliminate dairy. Now, this is where it starts to get a little nuanced. Let's back up a step. When you look at this test result and you see all of these things lit up, that's a prime indicator that this patient has leaky gut. And you can say to them, it looks like your gut is porous. And the reason I'm saying that to you is because you have a lot of foods that are coming up as positive. I don't intrinsically think necessarily that you're reactive to carrot or broccoli. But what's happening is that these foods are getting through the bloodstream. Whenever you eat them, if the bloodstream is open to the outside environment, anytime you eat it, it's coming in. And so you really want to work with them to quiet down the leaky gut nature of that. And I think this is a little outside our scope, but you're going to want to coat the lining of the gut, help block the leaky gut, get them off gluten, because gluten is opening the tight junctions for people. So you're going to want to get them. It's not highlighted, but they do also come up for all the gluten grains. So when you're presented with a patient like this is an ideal patient to say, okay, let's get you off gluten. Let's get you off dairy. It's challenging for people to do all at once. So usually what I'll say to people, I trick them, right? I say, okay, it looks like you're sensitive to gluten, dairy, shellfish, and the nightshades. So what would be the hardest thing to do and what would be the easiest thing to do? And we talk it through. So if someone's really, really sick, they tell me their hardest thing, it's inevitably going to be gluten and dairy. And what I say to them is, I really recommend that you start with the hardest thing first. 1, you'll have the biggest win. 2, you'll have the biggest impact in how you feel. And 3, it will then give you the ability to start with next things. Some patients are too sick for this. So it's difficult for them to do, but you want to try to start with the most impactful thing first. Nightshades are impactful. However, they're not the maximum impact when you compare it to gluten or dairy. These are really the top categories of food that people tend to react to. And when you're looking at this, it is very possible that the patient has genuine clinical response to gluten and dairy and nightshades. And as I forget his name, but one of a very famous early functional medicine doctor said, if you're sitting on a tack, all the remedies in the world aren't going to help unless you stop sitting on that tack. But what if you're sitting on 10 tacks? If you take away one tack, you're still going to be very uncomfortable. So you want to look to see how much patients can handle. And if they can handle a full elimination diet of the top foods, then you're going to want to do an elimination diet with that patient that's as broad as possible. Get as many tacks off of them as possible so they can feel better. Various health challenges take varying levels to respond. So when you have something like ADHD in a child, that takes about 3 months to really notice a profound difference in their brain function. When you have eczema, it can take 6 weeks for it to fully resolve. When you have irritable bowel, that's often very quick to start turning around. So it depends what you're treating. You might need to treat for longer to see the full impact for it. And it's hard with people, with kids. You'll say to them, do this for 3 months. And they're like, oh, I was going to do it for a day. A day's not impactful. It's not going to move the needle for people. Let's talk about this patient. This is a patient who also looks like a leaky gut panel, but a little less sensitive overall, except what really does jump out is this is a patient who's positive for 4 out of the 5 gluten grains, with wheat being the highest reactive. And then the others that are tested on this, they come up for all 5. So barley, gluten, malt, rye, and wheat. And when patients are responsive or reactive to all 5 of the gluten grains, these are people I often recommend moving forward with more testing. If they're sensitive to all 5 of the gluten grains, I say to them, at least on paper, you have gluten sensitivity. You may or may not have celiac. I do test most people because I don't want to miss that diagnosis. So I'm testing anyone who comes up like this for DQ2 and DQ8 genetics, along with celiac disease, which includes an IgA test, which is not IgA food sensitivity, it's IgA immune response. And we've picked up some celiac patients this way because this is often the first way people present. But what you'll notice about this is that this patient also has responses to a number of other foods in different categories. And again, you're going to want to pick your battles. So I say to patients, I don't care about dill, cinnamon, and fennel seed because the absolute amount of that herb or spice or flavoring that you're going to take in is really small compared to a meal, a pasta meal. You want to look at the absolute load for people. This was a study done. It's really cool. You know, there's always improvement, even when you do a placebo. So they had an IBS study, and the first group of patients got a sham diet, and they didn't change their diet at all, although they thought they were changing their diet. And they had about minus 50 points on their symptom severity. But then compare that to the patients who truly got a gluten-free diet and a diet that was tailored to their food sensitivities. They had more than 150 points reduction in their IBS symptom severity. Now, when we talk about avoidance of pain as a huge motivator, if you're someone who lives their life uncomfortable, scared to eat out, has diarrhea, constipation, bloating, gas, reflux, GERD, brain fog, asthma, eczema, and you notice a resolution, you're going to be motivated to stay away from the foods that cause that for you. So the amount of actual adherence to diet is often quite high for people who are motivated to avoid the discomfort and pain of what they experienced in the past, because they never want to feel that way. This is pretty cool. This is when you do actual blood biopsies on the gut, you can see people who are having positive reactions to food antigens, particularly gluten. You start to see all these intraepithelial lymphocytes. It's really cool. They're an early warning sign, especially for people who are going to go on to develop celiac disease. You can see these lymphocytes about 7 years before someone will develop celiac, which is just a cool fun fact. And you start to see the mucosal breaks and tears and the intracellular extravasation. It's just so interesting what you can see at a cellular level, the impact of this inflammation occurring for people. So when you're looking, going back to ALA-test, when you're looking at what your options are for food sensitivity testing, you 96, 184, 204, you can do a vegetarian or pescatarian panel. It's either IgA or IgG. And for the IgG, you can do a finger stick. So especially in this most recent climate where a lot of people aren't in the office any longer and it's more telemedicine, you can send people a kit and it's a finger stick, which also is really nice for kids. It's stable at room temperature. They don't have to come off their supplements. You don't want people changing their diet for this because you want to know what they're reacting to. But when you get these results, you'll allow people to start navigating through, how do I heal my gut, close it off so I'm not exposing the inside of my immune system to the outside world, and quiet down the immune responses. I love ALA-tests. Okay. I love them. I'm not paid for this. I just really love this. They have a full customized wellness plan for patients that you can take advantage of, because this will allow you to give people a whole plan as opposed to just giving them a result and saying, see ya. These are very easy to understand for people, so you can walk through them. We generally have our nutrition team walk through them, but before we had a nutritionist on staff, we were doing it ourselves. And it's very easy to walk through this with people and start to navigate and create what's going to work for them. They have a lot of handouts and resources. So anytime you need something, you don't have to recreate the wheel, which I really like, because sometimes you're short on time. They have a number of already done resources and handouts that you can give to your patients. So I think Alatus is great. They're local. We're in Newton, and they're in, I think, Rockport. They're about 45 minutes away from us, and they are led by physicians. They have dietitians on staff if you needed consultation. And as I mentioned, they have amazing customer service. They always answer their phones, which is fantastic. And then they pride themselves on presenting information in a way that's easy to understand. You can take action on it. It's really dialed in so that you're not searching for, well, what do I do with this information? It is truly dialed in. And this is Alatus's slogan: your patient, your voice, your choice. They're really well positioned to support you and your patients. I think I was supposed to talk for 45 minutes and I talked fast because I'm from Boston. I hope all of you were able to stay up with me because I do talk really fast.
No, no worries at all. That was fantastic. And honestly, not necessarily short and sweet, but short and very comprehensive. Absolutely. So yeah, it's always fun talking to folks from the East Coast, because the pace of conversation tends to go a bit quicker. But we did get actually a ton of questions in the chat. And folks, if you do have any questions for Dr. Trubeau to hop in and answer, feel free to jump in and ask away. So just jumping from the very top, what are some of the studies to prove that IgG studies are reliable to determine food sensitivities? As in traditional medicine, they're only shown data for IgE mediated food allergies and nothing for food sensitivities.
Such a great question. So, I was traditionally trained and came from a world in which food sensitivities and gluten sensitivity and pre-celiac and pre-diabetes didn't exist. So I'm not a good person to quote studies at you, but I do know that there are great studies out there. But what I'll say about this is that IG is well established via studies that you can look at anaphylactic reactions. But what you're looking at here, and I may not have mentioned this, is when you get these results, how you use them as a guidepost and a starting point. You're not going to make a patient get rid of every single thing on their reactivity list. You're going to pick the big things because you're going to pick the things that are leading to gut permeability. And those are very well documented. You can look up studies by Alessio Fasano, who admittedly, I'm a groupie of Alessio Fasano. I told him to his face, it's not a secret. My husband teases me that I'm a groupie, but I'm convinced he's going to get the Nobel Prize for his work on gut permeability and zonulins. So his work really demonstrated that when you put the gliadin particle into the CXCR3 molecule, like we talked about at the beginning, it does set off a cascade of events that leads to zonulin being released. And if you have DQ2 or DQ8, you are more likely, you have more of these receptors and more zonulin gets produced, and you open your tight junctions much faster for longer. So imagine that the outside world has access to the inside world of you for 4 hours. And again, that's at a time. So if you have a standard American diet and you're eating, what do you have for breakfast? Cereal or a bagel? What did you have for lunch? A sandwich. And what did you have for dinner? Pasta. You've essentially had your external world open to your internal world for your IgG antibodies to recognize foreign bodies all day. And if it happens for long enough, well, you start out with IgM, but you move quickly into IgG if it's repetitive and sustained. So I would say Alessio Fasano is probably the best one to look at in terms of the gut permeability studies, and then you use this as a starting point. You don't use it as the holy grail because, again, you'll make your patients nuts and they'll be mad at you if you say to them, eliminate everything on your list. No, eliminate the big ticket items that are causing the gut permeability and the massive inflammation that people have.
Perfect. Do patients need to consume the foods that are spiking on the test prior to the test? And if so, how long prior to the test?
Yeah, great question. So, there's 184 foods listed, right? So what we generally say to people is we want to get a sense of you in your natural habitat. So don't change your diet before this. I like to not have people change their diet because I'll use myself as an example. I never eat lobster. I had at 18 a really, really bad reaction to it and never ate it since then. And I'm turning 52 tomorrow, actually. So, thank you. So I'm turning a deck of cards. So many, many years later, I don't eat gluten. I don't eat lobster, but when I get my food sensitivity test done, and that's a good point to bring up, is you should test people about every 2 years. It takes a while to heal the gut. So every 1 to 2 years, not sooner than 1 year, because it really takes 6 to 18 months to heal that lining of the gut. So I still come up as highly reactive to lobster. I haven't eaten lobster since I was 18 years old. Okay. And we don't have lobster in our house. I'm not getting any cross-contamination. I truly have just a jacked up immune response to lobster. So you'll often see, so you should not change your diet for the test, but I do want to point out that you'll often see on this test, things that people are eating ongoingly will show up. But again, things like cucumber, lettuce, those are not exciting. The things that people are eating ongoingly that show up are things like gluten, dairy, high reactive foods, high moldy foods, or things that are across a category. But back to this, it'll also show foods that you never eat because you're genuinely reactive to them. So I felt very vindicated when my test, I don't eat either quinoa or bell peppers. They don't like me. It's mutual. We don't like each other. And then my test came up positive. So I could say to my family, see, there's a reason. So it will show things that you're eating. It'll show things you're reactive to, and it'll show things that you're not eating that you're reactive to. And it takes a little bit of time to navigate through this. I know that the team at Alitas is standing by, waiting for your call. They're happy to help you navigate through these questions.
That's great. And just another really important call out that you mentioned previously just about Alitas is, when you call Alitas, there's a human being picking up. I think that's something that can't be understated, especially in today's day and age. Nobody likes calling and talking to a robot and having to repeat yourself. It's the absolute. Yeah. So Alitas offers both a blood spot and a serum for some of the testing. What are the benefits to using one or the other?
So if they offer the blood spot or serum, that's for the IgG food sensitivity. The sensitivity, the turnaround, by the way, the turnaround is like 5 days. The sensitivity, the turnaround, the efficiency, the effectiveness, they're all exactly the same. It's really a matter of, I personally hate having my fingers pricked, and I would much rather have a blood draw. But then there's people who live far away or don't want to have a blood draw. It's really personal preference. It's everything else is the same. So if they offer the finger prick versus blood draw, it's really your choice.
Great. We got this question a couple of times, so I'll make it more generalized, but how does this test differ from similar ones that may be on the market? And, what makes you prefer the Alitas one?
Yeah, great question. I like Alitas because I like how they approach the testing, meaning, they have great technology. I like how they've done that. I also really like their reporting. So there are some great tests out there that are awful to look at and awful for patients to look at. And so it makes it unwieldy and difficult to use if you then spend more time talking to the patient about the result because they don't understand it. This is very easy to understand. So it really can be used for people at all educational levels. And then I like the price point of it. And then I have found that generally, as I track my patients over time, it correlates, meaning I can watch the patients improving, and I do see that represented on the food sensitivity and vice versa. So it tends to correlate beautifully. And I mean, we've been around for 14 years, and it's been a while. We've used other things, and I don't love the reporting, and I also don't love the price point.
Yeah, great call outs. If a patient wants to reintroduce the foods that they were seeing reactions to after how much time that they're no longer having leaky gut markers, could they safely consider reintroductions?
Oh, I love this question and I hate this question. So this is so personalized. So the first level of reintroduction is 3 weeks. You have someone eliminate it strictly. So gluten light is not gluten-free. If they're eating gluten once a week, they're not going to get that antibody decrease that you need to see in order to see the re-challenge. So you really want to have people go completely fill in the blank free. It's usually gluten, dairy, soy, legumes, corn, eggs. There's going to be something for people to eliminate, and you want them to go 100% hardcore. You can challenge at 3 weeks to see how they react, because sometimes people can't see it till you take it away. And when you give it back to them, they go, oh, I didn't realize that was my response to that. So 3 weeks is one marker. After 3 weeks, it's really about, it's less about challenging and more about reintroduction to see if they can tolerate any amount or if they can't tolerate any amount. So depending on what the issue is, some people, once they start to heal their gut, and remember, it takes 6 to 18 months to really heal that gut because it's inflamed, it's leaky. They often have inappropriate bacteria that are going on, dysbiosis. So you really want to take a full approach to their gut health. So after that, I always say to my patients, look, you have your own line in the sand that you should not cross. So the goal is find your line and stay behind it. So I work with people on finding their line. And it's not as easy as saying, oh, I can eat dairy now, because you might be able to tolerate some dairy when you're on vacation and you're not stressed and you're sleeping well. But you might not be able to tolerate that same amount of dairy at work with your boss on a high deadline day, because there's a lot of factors that go into your unique makeup. So you're going to want to have people test it out. And people, look, the patients are a lot more savvy than we are, because even if we tell them go hardcore and don't eat any of it, they're going to test it. So you're going to come back and say to you, okay, doc, so bless me, doctor, I have cheated. I'm like, oh my God, you're not cheating. You're simply a human and you're trying out where your line is. So they're going to test it out and they're going to have a pretty good report. Like, okay, I can tolerate it once a week in a small amount, or I can't tolerate it at all. It made me really sick and bloated and I don't like feeling that way. So after 3 weeks, it's essentially based on patient preference and how healthy they are, to circle back to the initial question.
Perfect. Yeah, that was a fantastic answer. The next question we have, and actually before we get to the next question, Dr. Judy wrote in the chat, it's also her birthday tomorrow. And she's happy birthday. And
happy birthday.
They're also in Massachusetts. So there we go.
Oh, wait, are we allowed to say Judy's last name? Shout out to the happy birthday girls in Boston.
No, but absolutely. Happy birthday to all the November birthdays. I'm a November birthday myself as well. So does gluten open up the tight junctions for everyone and not just those who are sensitive to it?
How horrifying is this? The answer to that question is yes.
Yep.
Any human who eats gluten, your tight junctions will open for about 15 minutes if you don't have the genes. If you do have the genes, they open for about 4 hours. I remember hearing that, and it was great talk with Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Fasano. I mean, that was like, that was like the giants of the industry in one room, sort of riffing, and they started chatting about that. And I remember when I learned that, it was horrifying, because you don't have to have celiac to open up your tight junctions, or you don't even have to have the genes. You just have to eat gluten.
Oof, I was scared you were going to give that answer.
Yeah, never the good news bear over here, right?
No, absolutely. So the next one we have coming in is in their experience, if they can get clients to eat an organic sourdough breads, they get as much relief as from avoiding glyphosates while healing their gut lining. What are your thoughts on it's not the glutens, it's the glyphosates?
This is such a really nuanced question. So yeah, I think this is the 10-tac thing, right? So glyphosate is the most commonly used herbicide in the world, and use has doubled between 2007 and 2014. It looks like it's on track to double again.
Scary.
And it was actually patented in 2010 as an antibiotic. So we all know that antibiotics kill bacteria. And what's really horrifying about glyphosate is that it kills the good bacteria, so the E. coli, but it doesn't kill the salmonella and the C. difficile. So those quote unquote bad bacteria having a field day, because we're altering the innate balance in the gut. So glyphosate unto itself is extremely harmful. So sometimes, yeah, it's basically what I say to people is, imagine that you just made a soup with like 100 ingredients and then you blended it together. Now tell me, what is one ingredient? It's a little bit hard to pull that out, but we say to people, you're going to want to eat organic for a myriad of reasons. One, to avoid the glyphosate. Two, because when plants are forced to protect themselves, meaning the herbicide doesn't do the job for them, their phytonutrient balance is higher. So you get more antioxidants and phytonutrient balance in a food that's organically grown versus not organically grown. So we do recommend that people eat organic. And some people will be more sensitive to the glyphosate than they will to the gluten, but you can't know that a priori. You have to sort of wade through. And it's really hard to be 100% organic. So it's hard to fully eliminate. I mean, if you go out to eat, you're getting glyphosate, you're getting genetically modified organisms, you're getting glyphosate, you're getting other pesticides. You're getting sugar. So it's really hard to tease out what are you reacting to. But I think you're right. Some people can tolerate sourdough bread. Some people, when they go to Europe, because the wheat has been grown differently and has been, American wheat is hybridized. So it's been, the gluten content is increased in it. So people are more reactive to American wheat or United States wheats than they are to Italian wheat, for example. So there's a lot of factors that go into this, but yes, simply getting rid of glyphosate can be very beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so interesting because we just got a question in the chat. If glyphosate or if gluten opens up the tight junctions in everyone, depending on genes, what about populations in Europe and the millennia that are dependent on bread and wheat? Well, I think we might have just gotten that answer there, why it may not be as reactive.
Yeah, the wheat is different in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the next question is, there's practitioners notice that when people eat the same foods every day, many of them develop sensitivities to those foods.
Yeah.
Food sensitivities they never ate. Well, basically, why does this happen?
It's happening because even with a perfect gut, so let's say you're not eating any gluten, so you're never opening your tight junctions in that concentrated manner. Even in a gut that's quite healthy, you can get leaky gut episodes. You can have times when your gut opens up and food particles will still get through. So stressful experiences, car accident, major illness, anything major, you can develop leaky gut kind of just like that. And it should resolve faster because it's a stress-based response, but it can happen. So anything you're eating on an ongoing, frequent, sort of constant basis has a higher chance of you getting exposed to it in the bloodstream. So what we say to people is, these are your big three to get rid of, your big categories, but you're also going to want to rotate your diet. Don't get in a rut, try new things, change it up, see what you can do to alter how your gut is going.
This next question is regarding leaky gut as well. How long does it take to heal leaky gut? How do you know that it's healed? And can you eat some of the sensitive foods once it is healed?
Oh, yeah. Well, 6 to 18 months is what I tell people. But like that was before we had a global pandemic and a recession and then like a world war, and all those things are super stressful for people, which perpetuates leaky gut. So I generally say think of yourself like a construction project. And imagine you're downtown and you see the wrecking ball and it takes down the building and it takes a day to demolish a 100-story building. Just like that. And then it takes some time to clean up the site. And then it takes 2 to 3 years to build something beautiful in its place. That's essentially what it is to rebuild a human. Mm-hmm. So you're going to notice the impact within 2 to 3 months, but you have little to no resilience or elasticity in your body's ability to take stressors. So I say to people, be nice to yourself, be nice to your body. This doesn't exist in a vacuum. Healing leaky gut is the supplementation, including L-glutamine and IgG particles and anti-inflammatory diet. Like there's a lot that goes into this, marshmallow root. And then are you sleeping? Because if you're not sleeping, you're not repairing. And are you moving your body and are you managing your stress? It doesn't exist in a vacuum. But generally I say to people, 6 to 18 months to really heal it. And that's assuming no backslides, that nothing happens in between now and then to make you come back to baseline, which is not where you want to be. So It's pretty hard. I say to people, once you have that experience of it, you're never going to want to go backwards. So you're going to be able to reintroduce foods, but you may not want to go whole hog on them because they're not your friend. They got you in this hole in the first place. So you want to minimize those in the second place.
Right. Absolutely. What's the youngest age that somebody can test for these food allergies?
Ooh, I have to acknowledge I don't treat kids, but I know my partners treat kids and we do it I'm pretty sure Alates is going to be able to chime in here, but I thought it was like 6 months and up.
Okay, perfect.
But
Yeah,
let's double check that. I thought it was 6 months and up, but let's have the Alates team, who I think are on the call. Let's have them put that in the chat.
absolutely. Alates team, if you are available, hop in the chat and write. If not, we can always do a follow-up
Yeah.
on that one for you. So the next question is, how do you suggest retesting, or how often do you suggest retesting patients?
Yeah, great question. I usually do it about every 2 years.
Okay.
And I'll share with you, I said to the team when we were doing this presentation together, hey, do you have my food sensitivity test from 2006 was the first test I did, which was really my entry into functional medicine. And I did the 184 food sensitivity panel, and oh my goodness, everything was red. Red
Yep.
meaning highly reactive, total leaky gut picture. I was also, by the way, diagnosed with celiac at that same visit, but everything was red. And I was like, I don't even know where to start. I remember eliminating gluten and bananas and dairy and nightshades. And I was on like the AIP diet before it was a thing. So I've been retesting my food sensitivity. And usually I say wait about 2 years because you really want to give yourself a runway to have improvement. But every few years I've been retesting my own. And at the last one, I don't know if the team remembers this, I said to them, is there any chance that you mixed up my blood sample? Because there was like nothing really lit up and nothing very exciting. And they were like, no, Wendy, that's your blood sample. We didn't make a mistake. So the first, remember, they have rigorous testing, but it was so much better. But it's been 16 years since I last tested, and I've been testing periodically every 2 to 3 years. And so you really will see tremendous improvement over time with people who are motivated, but don't do it too soon. Because I say to people, it's like watching your hair grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And as somebody who's currently growing out their hair, I understand the process.
Yeah.
Can you please tell me again the length of time IgG and IgA look back at food exposures?
The IgA, I'm not exactly sure about, but it's more recent. And the IgG is looking at your past, it's long-term antibodies, meaning you've been exposed to them for at least 6 months, 3 to 6 months, and you've built up the immune response over the last few months. IgM is 3 to 6 months. IgG, meaning from time 0, you have IgM antibodies from 3 to 6 months after that. And you start, as your IgM is going down, your IgG, I can't do this with my hands. I guess they cross. So IgG is going up as IgM is going down. So they don't cross. I guess they cross like that. I can't do that.
No worries. I think we get it. If gliadin is the primary trigger for leaky gut and opening of the tight junctions, is gliadin the primary trigger for leaky gut and the opening of tight junctions, or are there other primary triggers?
Yeah, I'm gliadin one major one, but we live tremendously stressful lives. So those are also, alcohol can trigger leaky gut, illness can trigger leaky gut, an accident can trigger leaky gut, stress, insomnia. So there's a long list of things that can trigger it. When you look at foods, it's really largely the gliadin from the gluten that's going to be the culprit.
Perfect. Which allergy test would you, this is a bit of a scenario one, which allergy test would you recommend for this practitioner? So their grandson is 4, has had bad eczema, so they did an allergy test. Apparently he had a reaction to peanuts and eggs and on an allergy test, which was on his back. He's never eaten those things. When he was tested at 2. I believe they did some kind of blood test after that, and it showed a higher amount of allergy to the egg and a mild allergy to the peanuts.
I can almost guarantee you that that's an IgE test.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing skin testing and looking for the wheals that happen. Those are not IgG food sensitivities. So if the 4-year-old still has eczema, I would recommend doing the finger prick and doing the 184 foods. The difference between the 184 and the 204 is kind of random things. So for a 4-year-old, I doubt they're really getting them. I would do the 184 and do a finger prick just because it's less traumatic for kids. You're saying it's going to be like a little pinch and then you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a little finger stick.
Yeah.
Perfect. And we have one last question. So since gluten causes an increase in tight junction opening, could this also be used to increase movement of nutrients into the body and bypass the absorption process?
I don't definitively know the answer to that, but I honestly don't know. But the minerals and nutrients are being absorbed through the villi, and the villi are in the gut. And they're the villi are these long frond-like appendages lining the gut. And in celiac, what happens is instead of being long and frond-like, they eventually blunt, so they look more like this. And so you don't have the surface area to absorb. So I don't think that bypassing the gut in that fashion, it's sort of a Pyrrhic victory, right? So you get more minerals and nutrients into your bloodstream for the body to absorb, but you're also getting bacteria and mycotoxins and other toxins. So I think the sum game is not a zero-sum game. I think it's really tilting it towards too much exposure that then jacks up the immune system. So I think that's probably not the best way. If you're going to bypass the gut, I would do IV nutrients, which are great, but don't expose you to the toxins.
Well, those are all the questions. Look at us, just right on the time here.
2:58.
Oh my gosh. Dr. Trubeau, thank you so much for the time today. Do you have any
my
final
pleasure.
thoughts for the folks that are here with us?
Yeah, I would say get started, right? It's super easy. The team at Allotest is fantastic. And the best way to learn is to do it on yourself, because you're invested in yourself and it's not scary. So get the data on yourself and then work with the team. And it's super easy to dip your toe in. And this is the kind of thing that's very impactful for patients.
Amazing. So with that, y'all, Dr. Trubeau, thank you again so much for joining us today. If everybody has a couple more minutes, we're going to transition quickly into Rupa Health, and I'm going to show you exactly how to order this test that Dr. Trubeau was kind enough to speak to us about.
Sure.
You're welcome to stick around, or you can hop off. But again, thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to go ahead and steal the screen share.
Perfect. Thanks, Adrian.
Appreciate you. Thank you. All right, y'all. So with that, we are going to transition to Rupa Health, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who we are, what we do. So if you've got about 10 minutes, would love for you to stick around, and I can show you exactly how to order this test in the next couple minutes. So my name is Adrian. If you missed the introduction, I'm the head of practitioner partnerships here at Rupa Health. And what we are is we're a functional medicine lab platform. Our goal and our mission is to bring functional medicine to the world. And what we've done is we've created our platform that does just that, specifically within the lab operation side of things. So instead of having to go to each individual lab to create an account, to place your orders, to manage your results, we work with over 30 different labs, of course, including Allotest. So now you can have a one-stop shop to order all of your food sensitivity tests, all your gut health tests, all your hair tests, SIBO tests, you name it. We have it all in one spot. Just to show you exactly who we work with here at Rupa, these are all of our labs. So here we go. We've got Allotest up here at the top, but so many others. So not only is Rupa a place where you can order all of your tests in one spot, but it's also a place where you can come and learn. So if you're a newer practitioner and you're interested in saying, hey, I know there's so many different tests out there on the market, what can I even, where do I even start? We have these tools on our platform, like a lab test comparison tool. So you'll click this button and it'll bring up all the different food sensitivity tests out there, and you can go ahead and compare exactly what we have on our platform. So we've got this Allotest here up at the top, which is my favorite. You can start order from here, but we give you all of just the raw data so you can make that decision for yourself. But we're going to go ahead and order this Allotest test. Starting an order on Rupa Health is so simple. You just need the patient's first name, last name, and email address. And from there, we collect everything else directly from the patient. So it makes things seamless for you and additionally ensures the patient's information is accurate. Once you're in this order screen, you'll see that that test is already added into my bucket over here on the right-hand side, but I can do some customizations. I can do things such as creating custom bundles here on Rupa Health. So sets of tests, sets of blood panels, a combination of tests from any lab that we work with, added into a bundle. That way, one click and they're all added into your cart straight away. Below that, you can create a favorites list. So individual tests that you commonly order, you can go ahead and put a heart next to it. That way, when you're ready to place an order for a patient, again, as opposed to having to go and search for individual tests that are appearing right here at the top. So I can order this 96 IgG food sensitivity panel from Allotest, but if I also want to order a MOTS test from Great Plains or a Dutch test for hormones from Dutch, I have all of these just available at my fingertips. And I simply just click into what test I want to order. It's added into my cart, and then I can go ahead and click send to patient. From there, we'll drop ship the kits directly to your patients, so you don't have to stock any kits. We offer wholesale practitioner prices, so the same price that you would get having an account directly with the labs are the same prices that we offer here at Rupa. Additionally, beyond that, we'll also manage the whole patient support side end to end. So not only will we be able to handle billing directly with the patients, we'll also ship the kits to the patients, and we'll handle any support, specimen issues, and if there's a blood draw required, we can also help coordinate phlebotomies. Beyond that, we can even generate automatic super bills so your patients can submit those to their insurance for potential reimbursement. All these things generally would be on your shoulders, right? These things take time out of your day, take time out of your week, sometimes hours. And so with Rupa Health, signing up for free, you're able to actually have those offloaded off your shoulders onto ours. Let's talk about how our pricing works. So as I mentioned, our pricing is wholesale practitioner prices, meaning the same prices that you would get having an account with the labs. Those are the same prices that we offer here at Rupa Health. The way that we generate our revenue is there's a flat 7% processing and ordering fee on each order. 7%. That's it. It's a free account to sign up for. There's no contract. There's no minimum spend. There's no monthly fee. So this 7% is paid for by whoever pays for the tests. What that means is if you're having us bill the patient and manage billing with the patient separately or directly, the patient will be the one in this case paying $9. That's the cost for Rupa. The alternative being you can go ahead and decide to pay for the test yourself. Click that button there and you can pay for the cost of the test yourself. The cost is the exact same as if your patient were paying directly, but if that instance, you can go ahead and bill the patient separately outside of our platform. Additionally, if you are interested in adding a bit of revenue on your side, right, some money that goes into your pocket from the testing, you are able to add your own personal fees as well. So you can do things like adding interpretation fees to the cost of this order. So when we bill a patient, they will pay that cost and that money will go right into your account. From there, again, it's as simple as clicking send a patient. And that's how you're able to order from Alitas, along with over 30 different labs, all in one place within seconds. Very simple, right? From there, you just hop right into your dashboard, and this is where you'll be able to track all of your different labs, right? So this is an example with John Smith, who's my patient. You can see 4 tests from 4 different labs here. I'm able to see, for example, when that sample arrived at the lab, when I can expect the results to come in. And once those results come in, I can just go ahead and download the results. I can send the results to my patient. We don't send the results to your patients without your consent. You have full control over that, as well as additionally, you can schedule a clinical consultation. So I know Dr. Trudeau mentioned previously that Alitas has amazing customer service. So what we can do here is actually still leverage that customer service with Alitas or any one of the labs that we work with by scheduling a clinical consultation directly with a clinician from the lab that you're working with. So just to repeat that again, you're not losing any of those amazing features and benefits that you get working directly with the labs that you would get working directly with Rupa. You can still schedule time to chat with a clinician from the lab that you're working with. Additionally, if you work with an EHR such as Practice Better, Elation, Optomantra, and a couple more, we can even have these results automatically input into your EHR. So again, the idea behind Rupa Health is that you can come and order all of your labs in one place. We will take care and manage your entire patient experience end to end, ultimately saving you time where you can build your business, see more patients, play golf, whatever the heck you want to do because it's your time. But again, taking all those necessary pain points, we'll call them, off your shoulders onto ours. It's free to sign up for, takes less than 3 minutes to sign up for, which is pretty incredible. But the last thing I want to show you before we hop off here, and I'll go ahead and share my contact information and go through a couple questions that I saw come through the chat, is education. So I like to call them the 3 pillars of Rupa. We have the practitioner clinic side of things, where we bring everything all into one place. We have the patient side of things, where we'll go ahead and manage the patient experience end to end. Our compliance rates are above 85%. We additionally also, one thing that's really cool about Rupa is not only can we accept credit or debit with our patients, but we can accept HSA, we can accept FSA, and we can even set up a 3-month interest-free payment plan with the patients to pay for the cost of these tests. We understand that costs can oftentimes be prohibitive to patients being able to complete these tests because, let's face it, they can be expensive and they tend to be cash pay. So with Rupa, we provide a payment option that allows those patients to get access to these tests at a lower price, as well as spread out over a couple months, which is pretty amazing. And then the third pillar of Rupa Health is education. You're actually all a part of our educational program right now. We call it Rupa University. And through Rupa University on our platform, you have access to webinars that we partner with our labs to create. So as you can see, you're all part of the one that we just did with Dr. Wendy Trudeau. But we do these on a weekly basis. So you can always join live, but if you can't make it live, we'll always record them and upload them to Rupa University. You can see all the different live classes that we've created here. So a ton of educational material that we create alongside our lab partners. And then even not only just our lab partners, but also some amazing practitioners just within the space. You'll see Dr. Dickon Weatherby on here. You'll see Dr. Dan Kalish on here. So amazing practitioners that may not be directly associated with labs, but are very influential within the functional medicine space. Again, it's free to sign up for. You just go to rupauniversity.com and you'll have access to everything that I just mentioned a moment ago. So I'm going to go ahead and share my contact information here in just a moment. And as I'm going through that, I know there was a couple questions that came through the chat. And so I want to make sure that I'm conscious and go through those as well. So I see a lot of questions coming in for physician services. Y'all, this is a very exciting program. So let me tell you a quick story. I'll take you back 2 weeks. Traditionally with Rupa Health, in order to create an account with us, you needed to be a licensed practitioner with an NPI. So what that means is you needed to be able to order these labs directly in order to order them through Rupa Health. We recently launched a program called Physician Services. And what Physician Services is a program that allows you as a practitioner. So if your license types or certifications may limit your ability to order tests for your patients directly, you can actually partner with a licensed physician that we work with to order tests who will order tests for your patients. Okay. Now, this is fantastic. Essentially, if you apply to this program, create an account with Rupa Health and are accepted into this program, you will have access to essentially our entire catalog of testing, as a licensed practitioner would be the one ordering the tests on your behalf. Now, there's definitely some important distinctions and details to call out here, right? Since the licensed physician is the one ordering the tests, there are a few details that really need to be known. One is just the cost, right? Generally, that 7% that I mentioned previously is how we generate our revenue, is the only cost to Rupa. Through physician services, there is an additional cost. That cost is $25 per test. Number two, it is patient pay only. So what I mean by that is normally, if you were being the one ordering the tests, you have the option of either having us bill the patient directly or you pay for the tests and bill the patient separately. Through the physician services program, it is patient pay only. So we have to bill the patient directly. Number three is the results are released to the patient directly. So again, generally, you have the option of controlling when the patient receives their results, as Rupa won't send the results to the patient directly. Through the physician services program, the results are released to the patient immediately and automatically.